On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, we're going to dive into the NBA GM survey, what we learned about the Thunder and the league as a whole, including what's the consensus around NBA scouts, coaches, executives on Chet Holmgren, and what the Thunder need to do to get themselves back into contention and back within the elites around the NBA. Find out on today's podcast, the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles, media member and editor-in-chief over at thunderousintentions.com. You can email the show, lothunderpod@gmail.com, and on Twitter, the show is at lothunderpod. On today's show, we're going to dive into the ESPN General Manager Front Office Coaches Survey put on by ESPN. How many teams are better than the Thunder this season? What's the future of this team look like? Plus, what's the opinion of these coaches, scouts, and executives who were polled on these big topics like Chet Holmgren's future in the NBA? That is what matters the most for the Thunder in this survey. There are other things that tie back to the Thunder, but let's start there. So if you don't know, ESPN yearly, every offseason, does a general manager survey, which is 15 NBA coaches, scouts, executives, but oftentimes, of course, referred to as a GM survey, even though there's also coaches and scouts and execs in there as well. They are polled on the biggest topics, from best player in the NBA to who will be the best player in 5 years, who wins MVP this year, the best rookie in 5 years, which is where we're going to talk about Chet Holmgren. Which teams had the best offseason and worst offseason? Where will big stars land in the open market, and who's going to win the NBA, both for their conferences and the NBA Finals. So it's 15 NBA coaches and scouts and executives. Tim Bontemps of ESPN wrote this article out, compiled all the data, and I'm sure we'll talk about it Friday on the Hoop Collective podcast as well. So what really matters to the Thunder is who will be the best rookie in 5 years. And of these, coaches, scouts, and executives surveyed, 6 votes went to Paolo Banchero. 6 votes went to Chet Holmgren. They were tied for the leading vote getters for who will be the best rookie in 5 years from now. Jay Ivey had 2 votes. Keegan Murray had 1 vote. And Jabari Smith Jr. had 0 votes. Not a single vote for Jabari Smith Jr. I think that is one of the most surprising facts of this poll. I think that, Jabari Smith Jr. Was a guy that, of course, many thought was going to go number one overall. Even on draft day, Woj tweeted out that he's going to go number 1 overall, and then he ended up not going number 1 overall as the Magic pull off the best smokescreen we've seen in quite some time in NBA history, especially in this day and age where you have so many guys who are looking for that scoop and trying to conjure it up any way that they can. I had Jabari Smith Jr. 1-1 on my board for a very long time. I think that Jabari Smith Jr. has all the makeup of a guy who can be the best rookie in 5 years. Is that who I'd cast my vote for, though? If I was an NBA GM scout coach that got pulled in this, I would not cast my vote for Jabari Smith Jr. But the fact that he had 0 votes, I think was surprising. I think that's kind of shocking that he has no votes whatsoever. Keegan Murray had 1, Jaden Ivey had 2, and then the rest all went and were split between Chet Holmgren and Paolo Banchero. For Keegan Murray, I think that he has the safest route to being a contributing player in 5 years. I think that what he does is just going to play it in some capacity, likely, of course, in a starting role. Where I think that Keegan Murray, and kind of view Keegan Murray as a guy that I think will all recognize as an all-star caliber player, like those of us that watch the NBA daily and and consume all this NBA content. Look, if you're consuming this NBA podcast on August 30th, you are a diehard NBA fan, and you are going to watch the Kings play basketball, and then you'll be seeing the All-Star impact that he has. I just don't think that he'll have the ever numbers or flashy game to make many All-Star games as he should compared to his play on the floor. I think he'll be one of those guys that we all advocate for to get the All-Star game. Just doesn't really happen that often. I think that he will make an All-Star game, but just not that often. So the fact that he has a vote for the best rookie in 5 years of this class is interesting. And then Jaden Ivey. I really like Jaden Ivey a lot. I had him number 4 on my board. I had him and Sharp as a toss-up between 4 and 5, settling in with Ivey up just slightly above Sharp for me. 2 votes for him. I think that that's a really good situation for him in Detroit. I think that playing against Cade Cunningham is really good. I think that playing with Duren is really good for him as well. I think that, of course, Troy Weaver is going to build a really good organization there and is already starting to change the culture there. I really like Jaden Ivey. I think that the only surprise here is that there's no vote for Jabari Smith Jr. Now, the splitting of Paolo Banchero and Chet Holmgren, to me, makes the most sense. I think that if you ever had truth serum and you ever had an ability to get the Magic to tell the truth, which doesn't appear it exists, right? Because if Woj and Shams cannot get the truth from them, nobody can in the NBA landscape. But I think that they were really deciding between Paolo Banchero and Chet Holmgren. I think that they were split between those two guys, and they let the whole Jabari Smith thing play out because we just kept assigning it to them. They never really asked for it, and they just didn't kind of correct course on that publicly. I think that it was a clear choice between Paolo and Chet for number 1. While I do have Jabari, and did have him on my board, I think that when you're in a position like Orlando, in a position like OKC, you have to go for that swing of a guy who could be generational. And to me, while I think that Jabari Smith will be very good, and I think that he'll guard 1 through 5 in the NBA at an elite level, and I think that he'll be a really good 3-point shooter, and those things play at a high level in the NBA, and those things are very important to building a winning team. I think that he doesn't have a chance to be generational. I think that there's a chance Paolo is, a chance that Chet is, and you take that swing anytime that you can whenever you get that lottery luck to jump up to the 1st overall pick or 2nd overall pick. So splitting it between these two guys makes a lot of sense. If I had to cast my vote, I would vote for Paolo Banchero just because I think that it's a more projectable role. When you close your eyes and think of who is going to be an all-star or a superstar from this year's rookie class, the pathway to get there is so much easier for Paolo Banchero than it is for Chet Holmgren to envision. Like if you just close your eyes and you have to force yourself to think of a scenario, think of what it looks like physically for Paolo Banchero to be a superstar, megastar from this draft class. It's a lot easier for that picture to come to your mind and for that to become clear in your mind as a vision than it is for Chet Holmgren. Because for Chet Holmgren to be a superstar, for him to be the best player in this draft class and be better than Paolo Banchero, it'll take him doing things we've never seen before. And it's a lot of pressure to put on somebody. It's a lot of expectation to put on somebody to make them go outside the box and reinvent the game of basketball. This would be a 7-1 guy that is going to make a living on the perimeter as a playmaker and also as a shooter and a 3-level scorer. Of course, he has some of that Dirk Nowitzki fadeaway shot that he showed in the summer league, an elite rim protector as well. At his size, at his frame, just it would be unorthodox. Whereas with Paolo Banchero, you saw in summer league, like it's just natural. It just looks natural. It feels natural. It just feels right that he's a superstar. He's an all-star. So I'd vote for Paolo, but I would have my ballot as Paolo, Chet, 1 and 2, and then a significant drop-off. I just think that's going to be one of these two guys, and that you hope it's yours if you're the Thunder. If you're the Magic, you hope it's yours if you're the Magic for Paolo Banchero. And in reality, there's a pathway where they're both just excellent, and we are, in 5 years, we are having great debates on my guy versus your guy type of deal in OKC and Orlando. There's a real chance, and I would bet on that possibility happening than any other possibility, that you're splitting hairs between who's better, Paolo or Chet Holmgren, in these next 5 years. I think it's important to note that for all the frame concerns, for all of the, as I mentioned, unorthodox questions about how his game translates to the NBA, for all of these Twitter GMs and those of you in the comment section just immediately writing off Chet Holmgren because of one freak injury, when he's had no injury his entire career up until this point. People within the NBA walls believe that in 5 years will be the best rookie in the NBA. Rookie of this class, obviously, I should say. People believe that in 5 years, Chet Holmgren will be the prize of the 2022 NBA draft. And so obviously either he will or he won't, right? Either he'll be a superstar or you'll get to be doing victory laps on saying, oh, his game didn't translate in the NBA. But people who do this for a living get paid big bucks to figure this stuff out. They believe in Chet Holmgren and Paolo Banchero to be just superstars in this league. And that should give you confidence from a Thunder perspective. Because when Jabari Smith fell, for example, you even had Chris Haynes tweeting out that the Thunder were going to take Jabari Smith Jr. Was that just was that sourced info? Obviously not. They didn't take him. It might have just been a guess on trying to be first of, hey, they're going to take Jabari because he fell. No, their guy was Chet Holmgren. And if the Thunder had number 1 overall pick, I truly believe they would have picked Chet Holmgren as well. I'm sure that the Magic would say the same thing about Paolo Banchero. It's clear, though, that these are the two guys that you make the decision about, and that these are the two prizes of the draft. And either it works out or it doesn't, but you'd rather have that swing. You'd rather have the chance than not have the chance at all. You'd rather be in that game than not. And for the Thunder, sitting at number 2 overall, if the Magic are truly splitting hairs between Chet and Paolo Banchero, if Sam Presti thought that Paolo Banchero was better than Chet Holmgren, you don't think he could have parlayed, pick 2 plus 2 first-round picks to go get him? I think that it's pretty clear from everything that we've heard in front of the scenes, behind the scenes, and also from this survey, Sam Presti's vote is with Chet Holmgren. Now, obviously, I don't know if Sam Presti was in the survey. What I'm saying is, it's obviously a split vote. They're 6-6, and Sam Presti had the chance to try to trade up to get number 1 overall pick, didn't do it. When Paolo Banchero goes number 1, he chose Chet Holmgren. So when there's 6 other voices backing you, and you have the best GM in the sport signing off on it, you got to feel pretty comfortable with the way that he projects to be an NBA player, Chet Holmgren. So that's exciting stuff, and that's kind of the biggest takeaway from the survey. But there's also other things that I want to mention, like who had the best offseason, who had the worst offseason, and kind of where the Thunder offseason fits into that, and a lot more. But first, I want to say right now about our good friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline is incredible, folks. You're going to want to go there and check it out. BetOnline.net is your number 1 source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports information this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week games. BetOnline is also your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. For the latest and easiest way to check in on your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf, head to the website right now and use your mobile device and learn more about the trend in action this season. BetOnline is where the game starts. And folks, if you're like me and you only really want to put your money on a sport that you're familiar with inside and out, and that being basketball, you can still bet on basketball right now. You can bet on NBA future bets, such as who will win the championship. Right now, the Boston Celtics are plus 500 to win. The Milwaukee Bucks are plus 600. The Warriors are plus 700. And the Brooklyn Nets are plus 750, tied with the LA Clippers for the top 4 odds to win the NBA championship. So go there right now, place a bet at betonline.net. We are back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, we are going to dive into the Oklahoma City Thunder and how they tie into this NBA offseason GM survey. We talked about who the best rookie would be. Let's go back and see who they think the best player in the NBA is right now, and that's Giannis with 11 votes. Luka got 1 vote, and Steph Curry got 3 votes. Now, who the NBA thinks, NBA GMs, coaches that were pulled in this, who they think will be the best player in the NBA in 5 seasons. Giannis has 7 votes, Luka has 6 votes, and Jason Tatum has 2 votes. Could anyone from OKC crack this list? Your only real candidate is Chet Holmgren. I obviously would not bet on him being the best player in the NBA in 5 years, but I think that that's kind of your only hope to be considered the best player in the NBA in 5 years. I mean, it sounds crazy, obviously, but even for as hyped as Luka was at pick 3, I don't think that many would say he'd be the best player in 5 years his rookie season before it started. Obviously, in his rookie season, he dazzled and showed you everything that he was, but I don't think that he had any votes his rookie season to be the best player in 5 years. Neither, of course, was Chet Holmgren, and Chet Holmgren will not play his rookie year until next season. But he's really the only hope to crack the list for OKC, and that's, of course, a very much long shot. Who will be the MVP this year? Giannis has 5 votes. Luka has 4. Joel Embiid has 4. Steph Curry has 1. Ja Morant has 1 vote as well. My MVP this year is going to be between Luka and Giannis, so I again agree with the NBA figureheads. My best player in the NBA in 5 years is Luka Doncic with a runaway. I would not even think twice about that. I think that Luka in 5 years will be incredibly regarded as the best player of the NBA at that time. And then best player in the NBA right now, I have Giannis, and MVP, I have either Giannis or Luka. I'd lean Giannis right now, but I do believe Luka can and should win MVP this year if he has a stellar start to his season. We discussed best rookie already. Now, which team had the best offseason? Here's the only gripe I have with this entire survey. The Thunder received 0 votes in this category. And I don't want to be a Thunder homer, but you're going to see why I'm kind of griping with this in a second. So the best offseason was the Celtics with 6 votes. That was a by and far large winner. They kept Tatum intact with Brown. They kept Marcus Smart. They got Malcolm Brogdon, which I think is going to help them. They signed Gallinari, who's dealing with an injury right now from Eurobasket, FIBA. But he should be okay within like December, January type of vibe, if not sooner than that. So Celtics clear runaway with 6 votes. The Sixers got 2 votes. You get a reset to that Harden-Embiid connection. Harden looks healthier, looks more motivated this year. You also, of course, got PJ Tucker and Daniel House and your old Rockets back together at Daryl Morey, but they get 2 votes. The Jazz get 2 votes. I get it. You got above market value for Rudy Gobert, or what was perceived to be market value. Of course, they ended up getting it, so it was market value at that point. But what was perceived to be market value for Rudy Gobert, so they get 2 votes. Now, here's where the gripes happen. The Clippers get a vote. The Knicks get a vote. The Kings get a vote. And the Wizards get a vote, as well as the Hawks. Now, the Hawks, they traded for DeJounte Murray, and they added him to Trae Young, whatever. The Clippers, they go out and get John Wall. That's it. The Kings, they got lottery luck. That's kind of all they did. The Wizards, are you really going to count re-signing Bradley Beal to a historic extension that no one in the history of the NBA has turned down so far and likely never will turn down as their big ticket win, as enough for a vote as the best off season? If that's enough for a vote, and if the Kings getting lottery luck and landing the 4th overall pick and drafting Keegan Murray after every prospect, so they didn't want to go there, if that's enough for a vote, then what about drafting Chet Holmgren? What about trading 3 first-round picks for an additional lottery pick, and so ending up with 3 lottery picks on the night? What about getting Jalen Williams in the 12th pick and Ousmane Dieng in the 11th pick and rounding out a 4-person draft with Jalen Williams out of Arkansas? What about re-signing Kenny Hustle to a long-term deal? What about re-signing Lou Dort to a long-term deal? Bringing back Mike Muscala, doing everything you need to do for the Thunder crew. Now, again, should the Thunder get a vote? No, in the sense of my vote would go to the Celtics. But if you're going to just throw away votes willy-nilly, it kind of goes back to the whole Rookie of the Year voting situation. If you're going to just throw around votes willy-nilly and just try to give it to somebody hipster-like, what's the argument for the Wizards? That they re-signed Bradley Beal to an extension that no one's going to turn down. It just kind of falls flat to me. The Kings, they drafted Keegan Murray. Great. The Thunder drafted three lottery picks and created one out of thin air on their own on draft night. It's just kind of odd to me the Thunder didn't get a vote there. In general. Worst off seasons. Mavericks, 6 votes. Hornets, 3 votes. Nets, 2 votes. Nuggets, 1 vote. Lakers, 1 vote. T-Wolves, 1 vote. Blazers, 1 vote. I would say the Mavericks are the worst off season, but again, I don't think it's a slam dunk to go sign Jalen Brunson to a break the bank kind of contract. It's a small guard who had a career year and a contract year. And we saw him, have an up and down season and up and down postseason as well. I I'm rooting for him. I like Jalen Brunson a lot. I'm just not sold on it being an absolute slam dunk to go break the bank for, in the sense of, if he were to regress, hypothetically was to regress, I would not be just stunned. Like, to me, it's not just a stunner if he regresses this year in New York. And I don't think it'll be because of the New York bright lights. I just think it's because, he had lightning in a bottle for that season in Dallas last year. So who knows? But obviously, the move was to bring him back. The Mavs said they were going to bring him back, then they didn't. And all they had to show for it now is Christian Wood, which I think is a good pickup. And I think that Luka could unlock Christian Wood's game if Christian Wood will buy in. That's a big if, though. The Hornets, I get it. They didn't do anything. The Nets, the drama happened, but I mean, you've got Kevin Durant back now. You've got Kyrie back. You've got Markieff Morris now signed, and also made that Royce O'Neal trade, which I like, to kind of round out the roster. And, could have a Ben Simmons going back to the fold once the season starts. Who knows? Nuggets, I get it. Didn't do anything. Blazers, I get it. You didn't do anything to help your case with Dame, even though you re-signed him to a deal. Now, my big gripe on this one is just the T-Wolves. Like, did the T-Wolves overpay for Rudy Gobert? Yes. But they had to. They didn't want to give up one of their young stars in Anthony Edwards or Karl-Anthony Towns. They didn't want to give up one of their guys, and even D'Angelo Russell. So they give up Jared Vanderbilt, who's a nice piece, and use their draft capital to overpay and go get a guy that they could not sign on the open market and otherwise couldn't afford without giving up a top guy like Cat or Anthony Edwards. Now, will this pairing work? Who knows? I'm so excited to see this team play. Like the team I'm most excited to watch this season on October 19th, when the Thunder play them, actually, is the Timberwolves. I'm excited to watch the Wolves, the Thunder, and the Mavericks this year. The Wolves are going to be very interesting to me. I don't know if the pairing is going to work. What I will say, though, is I struggle to call it the worst offseason because I think it did so much for the fan base. And I'll have to check again with Ben Beacon at Locked On Wolves, Locked On Timberwolves podcast. But from the outside looking in, it appears that move just really reinvigorated Minnesota basketball culture among the fan base, and like, they're excited for the season. They're excited for the direction of this team. They have Anthony Edwards, who's a budding star. They have Karl-Anthony Towns, who's an elite big man, and now they have Rudy Gobert, who's a defensive anchor for that team, an elite defensive big as well. So I just think it's going to be clunky at first, maybe, but I don't love calling it overpay. I also don't love Walker Kessler, so like counting that as an additional first round pick that was given up. I don't do that because I had Walker Kessler in my 50s on my board. So to me, he was a first round pick was spin on him, and obviously that's who the Jazz wanted. But to me, he's a 50th kind of guy on my big board from last year's draft, so I don't really care about that. I would vote again for either the Hornets or the Mavs as my worst offseason, so I think that they got it right again. I'd go Mavs, but that's just where I stand right now. The GMs also voted on who the next team will be for KD. 13 goes to the Nets, 1 goes to the Suns, 1 goes for the Celtics. This is who KD's team will be after the deadline is over. I think he's staying in Brooklyn. Who will Donovan Mitchell's team be after the deadline is over? The Knicks got 14 votes and the Jazz got 1. That's interesting. For that many people to be convinced within the NBA that Mitchell is a Knick that is going to be fun to see how it unfolds. As far as this survey goes, obviously, it was very fun to see what the NBA thinks. Now, the last thing I'm going to end with is teams that got votes to win their conference or the NBA Finals. The Bucks, Celtics, and Heat got votes to win the East. The Clippers, Suns, Warriors, and Nuggets got votes to win the West. And everyone but the Nuggets and Heat in that list got votes to win the NBA Finals. I think that it's pretty clear. You need the guy next to Shea in the sense of Tatum and Brown, who can both score at a high clip. Now, could Josh Giddey eventually get there and score at a high clip if he can shoot the ball better with the hire of Chip England, who's going to come in and try to teach him how to shoot? Absolutely. But you need to find that guy, whether it be through development or it be through this next draft class. You need to find your pairing next to Shea. If Shea is going to be the guy that leads this team into the next wave of an era for Thunder basketball, into the postseason, into championship contention, you need your second star. You need your guy who everyone considers a star. We're at that point with SGA. I think that every NBA fan that watches the sport considers SGA a star. You need to find that second guy. And then you have a lot of complementary guys, I think. I think you have a lot of guys that can fill out this roster, like a JRE, like a Darius Baisley, like a Trey Mann, who can fill out this roster and be a very heavily complementary piece. Now it's time to go find those stars. You think that you do it, Chet Holmgren, but we'll see. And then, of course, you're going to have a high first-round pick in the upcoming draft as well. So that will be very fascinating as well. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to break down the SGA saga from all angles. I know that a lot of you are freaking out, stressing out about what this Chet Holmgren injury does for SGA. I'm going to break it down from my take about it, a positive spin on it, and a negative spin on it. I'm going to give you all three angles, and we're going to cover this thing from the start to finish tomorrow, smother and cover it in all the content you can need. And by the end of it, you can make your own decision on how you feel, but I'm going to give you all the tools needed to make that decision on tomorrow's show. So subscribe for free across all platforms so you never miss an episode, including on YouTube. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.